Lately, I've been receiving a lot of questions about bone broth. So today, I thought I'd do a short video and answer some FAQs, frequently asked questions. Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and welcome to Mary's Nest. This channel is all about living the simple life, cooking from scratch, making home remedies, and creating a cozy home with thrift store finds. So if you're like me and you like the simple life, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the little notification bell below that'll let you know every time I upload a new video. When I first started my YouTube channel about 6 months ago, I created a series of videos that I called Mastering the Basics of Traditional Foods Cooking. And I covered bone broths and ferments, cultured dairy, sourdough starter, making sourdough bread, sprouting or soaking and sprouting grains, drying them, how to make sprouted flour, so on and so forth. All of the things that revolve around traditional foods cooking. But the two videos that are watched the most and get the most questions are my how to make beef bone broth. I think it's how to make rich and gelatinous beef bone broth or something like that. I'll link to it in the iCard. And then the second one is how to make chicken bone broth for pennies a jar, I think is what I say. And I'll link to that one as well. And I usually just go ahead and answer the questions in the comments. Some people will send me messages through our Facebook group, which we call Mary's Nest Modern Pioneers. and so I'm just always answering them and kind of saying the same things over and over again. And I thought, I should do a video and cover these frequently asked questions. So today I made some chicken bone broth in my slow cooker. And I found this is my favorite way to make bone broth. For years I made it on the stove, and recently I experimented with making it in a multi-cooker like the Instant Pot. The one I have is called a Mealthy. But when it comes right down to it, I like the product that comes from the slow cooker the best. For chicken bone broth, I do it for about 6 hours, and for beef bone broth, I let it cook for about 12 hours. And in the crock pot, what I do is I have 3 settings, including off, or excluding off. I have high, low, and keep warm. Keep warm in my crock pot is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the perfect temperature for cooking bone broth, because you don't want it boiling and you don't want it too hot, because that breaks, as they say, the gelatin, and then your broth or your bone broth will not be gelatinous. So what I do is I turn it up to high just to get it warm, and then after about an hour, I turn it down to keep warm, and I leave that, in this case for chicken bone broth, as I said, for 6 hours. Now, a question that I frequently get is, Mary, all of the ingredients that go into making a bone broth can be expensive. How is that worth it? Doesn't it make much more sense for me to just buy the bone broth that's sold at the store? And that's an excellent question. Now, when it comes to chicken bone broth, it's actually quite inexpensive to make, because in my case, I like to make roast chicken bone broth. And what that involves is taking the carcass from a roasted chicken and throwing it in with a bunch of vegetable scraps that would have otherwise been thrown out or put in a compost pile. And so this way, I wouldn't throw them out. That's why I save them, but other people, might just be disposing of these scraps. And I save these scraps that I have, and once I have enough scraps and what I consider enough carcasses, I like to have more than one chicken carcass when I make chicken bone broth, and I just throw that into the crock pot, fill it with water. I like to add white vermouth as the acid. You can certainly use apple cider vinegar if you want. And that helps pull out the collagen from the bones and the cartilage, having a little bit of acidulated water. So making chicken bone broth is really, you're just using, in my case, making it a roast chicken bone broth, you're using scraps. You're using things that might have otherwise been discarded. And even doing it that way, when you go to strain this is my first batch, I'm not going to throw everything out. And the reason is you can get a couple of batches from the chicken bones. I also throw in some chicken feet. which I buy at the farmer's market for about $2 a pack. It's a real bargain. And after 6 hours of cooking, there is still going to be gelatin, collagen, so on and so forth, that can be extracted from those bones. So I'm not going to discard this. When I go to strain this, I'm going to I'm going to put the spent vegetables into the compost pile, because they will be quite mushy and most of their nutrition will have been removed. But I'm going to save those bones. I'm going to put them right back in the crock pot. The feet will definitely still have lots of collagen, gelatinous matter to release. I'm going to put those back in the crock pot. I'm going to cover them with water. I'm going to add a little more white vermouth. I'm going to warm it up on high, turn it down to keep warm, and go another 6 hours. And I'll get a gelatinous batch of bone broth. And I have actually met people via the internet who have told me that they've gotten up to 12 batches of bone broth from their chicken carcass and feet. To me, that's amazing. They call it their perpetual bone broth. Well, everything I've shared here definitely, and even more so, applies to beef bones. Someone recently, I think it was yesterday, sent me a note via our Facebook group and said, Mary, oxtails, because I like to put oxtails in my beef bone broth, that really makes it gelatinous. Those are what I consider my insurance policy, the way I consider chicken feet my insurance policy, to guarantee I always get a nice gelatinous bone broth. Well, she sent me this lovely message and she said, Mary, oxtails are, and I forget the exact price she was quoting me, was $6 and something, maybe $6.49 a pound. She said, oxtails are $6.49 a pound. I can't afford to make a batch of bone broth for that and then throw those oxtails out. That would be such a waste. Where do you buy your oxtails? Well, I actually buy my oxtails. Sometimes I find them at the grocery store, but I like to buy them online from US Wellness Meats, and I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go over and look at their website. They're wonderful. They sell all kinds of bones. It's all grass-fed. They sell meat, chickens, everything, the works. And the good thing about them is get on their email list, and they send out a discount code, I think almost like every other week, for about 15% off your total price. And that's a wonderful savings. And you just look for those emails and use that discount code. That's when I order. And I highly recommend them. But in any event, even so, I mean, they're not going to be $1 a pound. They're definitely going to be in that price range that this lady sent me a note about. But what I shared with her, and I share with you, is you're going to reuse those bones. One batch at 12 hours is not going to extract everything that can come out of those oxtails, as well as neck bones and shanks and marrow bones, whatever you put in your beef bone broth. It's going to take many batches to extract everything out of those bones. And you will notice after you make your first batch of beef bone broth, you look at if you put oxtails in, or even your neck bones, whatever the case may be, you're going to see that the meat still looks pretty good, that there's still some fat that hasn't dissolved. With oxtails, you're going to see that there's still a lot of the cartilage that has not dissolved. So they're still good to make another batch of bone broth. So never be afraid of buying your own beef bones and then making your own beef bone broth, because it really is very economical than what you would spend when you buy a small jar at the store. Plus, it's going to be a much higher quality of beef bone broth when you make it yourself. And as I said with the chicken bone broth, you can get almost a perpetual batch of bone broth going. Strain out what you need, add more fresh vegetables, add more water, add a little acid to it, some type of wine, or as I said, white vermouth or apple cider vinegar, and let it go again, and then strain out what you need and keep going and you can always just put a little bit in a glass and stick it in your fridge and see if it comes gelatinous. And as long as it's continuing to come gelatinous, you have an excellent bone broth. And even if it doesn't come gelatinous, but there's still flavor to it, there is nutrition in it. So even then you can still keep it going. And as I said, I have met many people on the internet who tell me, oh, Mary, I've got my bone broth going for 12 batches, and it's my perpetual bone broth. So definitely try your hand at making bone broth if you've not done so in the past. And just keep it going. Keep a perpetual bone broth going until you see that it gets to a point where either it's not gelatinous or it no longer has any flavor. And then at that point, the bones, whether they're chicken bones or beef bones, you know, have had every little bit of nutrition leached out of them. Now this is my first batch of this set of chicken bones, and I'll just show you. I think I've got a little chicken foot sticking out here, but as you'll see, there is still plenty of nutrition left in this chicken foot. Look at that. The skin is still intact. It's still quite firm. This is excellent. So I would never discard that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take everything out, and then I'm going to let it cool, and then I'll just remove the vegetables, and I'm going to put the chicken feet and the carcass is all broken up in here, and all of this, it's going right back in. And I'll add a few fresh vegetables, some peppercorns, a bay leaf, some water, and some white vermouth, and I'll get another batch going. If you'd like to learn more about making bone broth, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I show you how to make roast chicken bone broth from start to finish. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.